Donald Trump and his defense were there on this historic day where the Democrats prosecuted a president for the first time in American history. And of course, there were opening arguments that took place, and the person who led the oral arguments, opening arguments, for the government is none other than Matthew Colangelo. We know all about this guy because we've talked about him previously here as we were doing our trial prep. Matthew Colangelo, this fella you see here, first came onto the scene back during the Obama administration, was there at the DOJ under Eric Holder and others. And then when Trump came on, guess what? They weren't in charge of the DOJ anymore. Donald Trump was. So what happened? He bounced over, joined Tish James. Name is all over a bunch of filings against the Trump organization and so on, was the mastermind behind that onslaught, which Tish, who really didn't do much of anything in that trial other than take her shoes off in the courtroom. Ugh, sick. And Engeron was like sniffing it up or something. Didn't even care. So that was happening there. As soon as that was underway, Matthew Colangelo went over to Joe Biden's team. Some people say maybe he's the brains behind the classified docs case, the J6 case, hands it all off to Jack Smith. Once Jack Smith has that done and running, he goes over to Alvin Bragg's office, which is where he is now. And the Alvin Bragg prosecution was dead on arrival. Cyrus Vance declined it. Alvin Bragg declined it. The Federal District of New York, Southern District there, also declined it. Matthew Colangelo came over from the DOJ. Suddenly, this case is back out of nowhere. And so he was there delivering the opening arguments for the government. Why not? He knows this case inside and out since he's been targeting Trump and prosecuting him every single moment he's awake. And this is not justice, by the way, right? This is somebody who is forum shopping, or let's say career shopping, prosecutor's office shopping, just to go take out the former president. So this is what Trump said before the day got underway. Of course, as soon as he's done speaking, we're going to jump in and see what Inner City Press has to say about this. All his links are in our description wherever you're watching this, at Inner City Press on X and on Substack. So check this out from Trump. He came out in New York and he spoke for about 3 minutes explaining what he thinks about this sham facade of a prosecution.
Thank you very much. I just want to say before we begin, these are all Biden trials. This
True.
is done as election interference. Everybody knows it. I'm here instead of being able to be in Pennsylvania and Georgia and lots of other places campaigning, and it's very unfair. Fortunately, the poll numbers are very good. They've been going up because people understand what's going on. This is a witch hunt, and it's a shame, and it comes out of Washington. It's in coordination with Washington, everything, including the DA's office. It's in coordination with Washington. I just want people to understand that this is done for purposes of hurting the opponent of the worst president in the history of our country. Second of all, we have another trial going on right now. That's Letitia James. She campaigned on the fact that I will get Trump, I'm going to get Trump, and it has to do with a bond of $175 million. First of all, she doesn't want me to participate with financial companies in New York, so we have a company, I guess, based in California. It's a bonding company, and I put up $175 million in cash, but she says the bonding company's not good. She doesn't like the bonding company.
She'd rather take over Trump Tower.
The collateral is good, and I put up $175 million in cash, and she's questioning the bonding company. Well, when you put up cash, and the number is 175, which is what we're supposed to be putting up, but I give it in cash, she shouldn't be complaining about the bonding company. The bonding company would be good for it because I put up the money, and I have plenty of money to put up, but nobody is going to be putting up with this. Nobody is going to be listening or coming to New York anymore. Businesses are going to be fleeing because people are treated so badly.
Because Tish is eating all the buildings.
Unfriendly place to do business, and that's why businesses
everywhere she
goes
with their shoes off.
As migrants come in and take over our parks and our schools and everything else. So on the Letitia James case, she's the worst attorney general in the country, by the way, and she keeps a lot of business out of New York, and businesses that are here are leaving, and that means jobs and a lot of revenue. Somebody's going to step in. The governor, somebody has to step in and do something because your businesses are fleeing.
They're all happy about it.
Letitia James, the money was put up. It's $175 million, and I don't think she's complaining about me for the first time ever. She's complaining about the company, but why would she be doing that when I put up the money? So I just want you to know that that's taking place in front of an extremely crazed judge who's the most overturned judge in New York State. He was overturned 4 or 5 times on that case alone. You know who it is. I don't have to mention names. I want to be nice. I want to be very nice.
Areola the Nip.
A thing like that one. And a thing like what's going on right here should never be happening. It's a very, very sad day in America. I can tell you that.
We got it, Mr. President. We got it for you, man. All right, so you see the scene. Always like to set the stage. That was Todd Blanche standing right next to him, looking sharp. Red tie, blue tie duo right there. Let's go get them, boys. So we go into court. We've got a reminder on who Matthew Colangelo is, and he's going to be the person who's doing oral arguments during day 5 of the trial today. Now, you saw Trump just came came out. He had something to say to the press. It's rigged. Letitia James is terrible. This whole city's a disaster. Goes into court, now seated at the defense table. There's a hustle, a bustle afoot. Media's taking their photographs. Suddenly, it's time to go. Door bursts open. All rise. Oh, gosh, it's Judge again. We stand up. Please be seated. Court clerk now announces the case. This is the time set for the people of the state of New York versus Donald Trump, indictment number whatever. Judge says, good morning, everybody. Okay, it is now time for openings. How long are the openings going to be, Mr. Government? Prosecutor on the docket today for the government is Steinglass. He says, 40 minutes, Your Honor. Todd Blanche, he stands up. He goes, 40 minutes? We need 25. Judge says, good, because we will break early because there's something going on. And there's, I think, a juror who has a dentist appointment is what the news says, filling in the gaps here. Merchan, the judge, says, also, before we begin, we've got a slight problem here with one juror. Juror 9 has told us that they're a little bit concerned about the media, for whatever that means, and says there's a lot of attention here. So I suggest that we speak with this juror in my chambers, and I'm sorry, I mean in my robing room, and I suggest that not all you come in here, all right, looking at Trump. Don't you even think about coming back into my robing room lest you see what I do back there. So then Trump just is seated there at the defense table, and he's seated alone. And then we see other attorneys get up and get out of there. So Todd Blanche, Emil Bove, Susan Nicholas, they all pile into the judge's robing room. So does the prosecutor's team, and juror 9 goes back in there. There's a hustle and bustle afoot. Donald Trump, the president, catches a little bit of shut-eye, much needed. And they're back. Judge Merchan comes back out. He's back on the bench. He says, okay, we got this cleared up. All right, juror 9 is going to remain with us. We've got that settled. Gave them a nice talking to. You're strong enough and you can do this. Get back out there. All right. Now, here the judge says, I want to address some other preliminary matters before we get into the openings. Says, first of all, on the Access Hollywood transcript, he says, you know, I've reviewed it and I see no reason it should not be admitted into evidence. Now, he says on the Sandoval hearing, and this is what they call the prior bad acts that they'll try to use to impeach the former President Trump if he decides he is going to testify. And if he does, they'll say, oh, well, that's interesting. You have a character for dishonesty. Your character for truthfulness is lacking. How do we know? Well, judges in this case said this about you. And in this case, they said this was basically fraudulent. And in this case, they said you were lying here, or you did this, or you should be gagged over here, right? A whole litany of all the bad things, and you didn't put the toilet seat down in this one either. And what's so convenient about this is Matthew Colangelo was the person who orchestrated all of these different crimes, essentially, or prosecutions in one way or the other. And he is the guy who didn't put the seat down, but he's blaming it on Trump, right? He's saying, oh, hey, let's manufacture Trump not putting the seat down type of a situation. And then we'll blame him for not putting the seat down. Like, okay. And he's following him around to every single room. Again, lifting it up, lifting it up, lifting it up. You're like, hey, man, there's no crimes going on here. Stop it. So they go through that big laundry list of all of the smears, and the judge says, okay, look, I've read it. Okay, I've read on the Sandoval hearing. I'm going to read my ruling. Here's what can come in, and here's what is not allowed in. So he says the court will allow into evidence the case of Tish, People by James versus Trump. So Tish's case, which was governed by Angeron Areola, aka the Nip, right, with his Greenfield, who is on the same level with him for whatever reason that was all about. And they moved the cameras away from them. Like, don't show them anything. Whatever that was about. Some of the most rigged lawyering and legalese and judging from any case we've ever seen ever, and resulting in $500 million judgment against Trump that's now been, cut back down to 175 on appeal. That whole case can come in. And what they can talk about is Trump was fined for posts about Greenfield, the judge's Greenfield. His GF, who was sitting right next to him. Very strange. What the heck's going on here? So that is now allowed. They can say, oh, see, once one domino falls, they use them all. Trump got in trouble by that rigged court and that rigged judge, which is right around the corner, right? It's also in New York. So they can parlay that into this case. Now, as to E. Jean Carroll, the court will allow the defamation finding. And he says also from Tish versus Trump, we're also going to allow that Trump consented to the dissolution of the Trump Foundation as to why. So you can talk about all these things. So he says this is a Sandoval compromise. So I'm going to allow some stuff in, but not a lot of stuff in. So the court cautions Trump, this is a shield and not a sword. So don't use this offensively. So the clerks are all, okay, just kind of hanging out. Now it's time to bring in the jury because all that has been settled. So go back to their respective seats. Pre-motions have been resolved. Jury comes in. All rise. We're all standing for the jury. And this time we care because we like the jury. We like them a lot. Hey, everybody, good to see you. Your energy's good. You're kind of bouncing around. Great to see everybody. Hey, good to see you. Thank you, sir. Yeah, come on in. Great to see you. Eye contact with all of them. Boom. You're awesome. You're awesome. You're awesome. Smile with your eyes at all the jurors. We love you. Like us back, please. Point is, we're in. We're now seated. The judge addresses the jurors. Merchan presiding says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Now, I have legal instructions that I need to review with you first before we get into today's business. The law requires the prosecutor to make an opening statement, just to be clear about this, but not the defendant. And as we go through these proceedings, we will mark certain objects as exhibits. And the defendant may, but is not required to present any evidence at all. In fact, the defendant is presumed to be innocent. Yeah, right. Not in this jurisdiction. The people must prove each element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. And remember, before you were seated here today, ladies and gentlemen, you promised to be a fair juror. I explained during jury selection, we are often sufferers from preconceptions and from stereotypes and from implicit biases. And I caution you today, ladies and gentlemen, to guard against those. Now, under our law in New York, juror number 1, looking at you, sir, will be the foreperson of this jury. And in this case, we have 6 alternate jurors. Now, as we go through this trial, ladies and gentlemen, do not speak about the case by any means at all. Do not read about the case, including on the internet. Now, we're going to end early today at 2 p.m. And in fact, we'll end at 12:30, now that I think about it. And tomorrow, when you come back, we're going to get started at 11 a.m. We're going to have the contempt hearing before that, as we know. Any questions? Jurors all nodding their head. Okay, no, this is fine. Let's go. So, with all that said, judge says, Mr. Government. So, Matthew Colangelo, the Biden prosecutor who's been following Trump around forever, gets to make a big debut in the first criminal case that he has orchestrated against the president of America and current presidential contender. Let's not forget who this is. He starts in front of the jury. Colangelo says, ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a criminal conspiracy. Donald Trump corrupted the 2016 election. And the scheme began when Trump, the defendant, met with David Pecker, with Michael Cohen there. And they conspired to conceal negative information about Mr. Trump. Now, I want to make a point the defense is obviously going to be making, but this was not charged. There is no conspiracy charge in this case at all, not one. So this is unethical and dishonest. It's not even accurate. If there was a criminal conspiracy, why didn't you charge it? You didn't. It's 34 counts of falsifying a business record. That's the crime. And really not even a crime. We don't even know what it's based on. Maybe he'll tell us. The scheme began. Trump met with David Pecker and Michael Cohen was there. And they conspired, not charged, to conceal negative information about Mr. Trump. Now, Michael Cohen paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels, and he did it to silence her, which she agreed to and signed a bunch of documents, evidently. Now, Trump, the defendant, claimed the payments to Michael Cohen were for legal services because that's what was on the check, but that was a lie. No, instead, the defendant falsified 34 business records. Okay, that's the actual crime that they allege happened, and he was indicted for that. So why'd you say criminal conspiracy? Because there's no charge for that. But he falsified invoices, he falsified voucher entries, and payment checks with check stubs, all the ones we've seen. Michael Cohen sends Trump an invoice. Okay, Trump doesn't do anything. He's sitting there, making America great again. Boom, he gets an invoice, felony. Every time Cohen sends him an invoice, felony. Because apparently Trump was a conspirator who created this whole conspiracy, but there's no conspiracy charge. Prosecutor Matthew Colangelo continues. Biden's prosecutor, previously Tish's prosecutor, previously Obama's prosecutor, says, let's go back in time. Let's go back to almost 10 years ago. August 2015. They haven't charged this case since. There was a meeting with David Pecker of AMI, American Media Institute, some organization that owns the National Enquirer, which was a big tabloid magazine. They say Pecker had a say over what was being published. And this person called Dylan Howard was also involved, ladies and gentlemen, painting this story of these two guys all the way August 2015. You remember what it was like back then. Now, these people, Colangelo says, Pecker and Howard, they created this conspiracy and they attacked a candidate named Ted Cruz, including accusing his family and being involved in the assassination of JFK. Well, there's been no evidence that he's not the Zodiac killer or was on the grassy knoll. We don't know. There's open questions about this. You know, Ted Cruz has a podcast, by the way. They attacked Ben Carson for alleged medical malpractice. Sounds like regular old campaigning, and the assassination of JFK stuff was like internet memes, okay? It was just hilarious. So Pecker was trying to bury the negative information information about the defendant. It was all a joke. Maybe he is the Zodiac Killer. I don't know. It could be true. So the prosecutor says they carried out 3 catch and kills. Standard media stuff. A doorman named Dino Sajudin was trying to sell information about an alleged out-of-wedlock kid that Trump had. And so they paid Sajudin $30,000 to be quiet about it. And he was going to go to the National Enquirer. Hey, I've got this great story about... So Trump just pays to make it go away. It's $30,000 at least to pay for it in PR. So the prosecutor continues. He's telling the jury about this riveting case. And Cohen, he says Michael Cohen got involved. And when this contract was being meted through so that they could do this capture and kill thing for this $30,000 illegitimate child thing, they said that Cohen got involved to add in a $1 million damages clause. So if this guy violates his confidentiality agreement, boom, he gets hit. He's got to pay $1 million damages. I don't really know what that had to do with anything in this case. This, whole story about that Sajudin, first time we're hearing about that one here. Now then he goes into this other one. Karen McDougal, again, another person who was not charged in this indictment. Trump was not charged for any sort of, was he charged for $30,000 transactions? No, it's not in the indictment, not in the 4 corners of any document. So then they go into another one. And then there was another one, Karen McDougal. She was a former Playboy Playmate, December Playmate of the Month, I'm pretty sure, of the year, maybe. Keith Davidson represented her, shopping her story of her affairs with Trump. She had ended an affair with Trump nearly a year earlier. Now, Howard then told Cohen that he thought the allegations were true, and they all discussed it. They said, man, her story sounds good. It seems like it matches up. We're not going to be able to do anything about this. So David Pecker from the National Enquirer, he agreed that AMI would pay $150,000 for the story. And that's how they do this catch and kill, says the prosecutor. They're covering it up. And in this deal, AMI added other terms. They said Miss McDougal would also appear on the cover. Huh? So they're going to put her on the cover. She's like, oh, perfect. I want to be famous. That's great. But it was hush money, he says. Even though we put her on the cover, she brings this claim. She's like, I'm going to say this about you unless you give me some money and put me on the cover. They're like, fine. All right, you're pretty good looking. So fine, we'll put you on the cover. What do you want? 150,000? Okay, fine. Go away. So they put her on the cover. And now she's like, I was taken advantage of. This was hush money, they say. This was hush money. Prosecutor says, are you offended, jurors? So you're going to hear David Pecker testify about his conversations with Trump about McDougal. He's going to come in and explain to you how this whole scam worked, where they catched and killed. But Trump didn't pay, though, and Pecker was frustrated. Now, Cohen recorded a conversation with Trump, and you're going to hear it here. Michael Cohen spoke with Alan Weisselberg, Trump's CFO former, who's now been convicted of perjury thanks to Tish. And so he got targeted because Michael Cohen, of course, is a perjurer, and then they've got a porn star, Stormy Daniels, which is a little rough for them, too. And then they needed to start to cut the legs out from the other side, so they went after Weisselberg. So Matthew Colangelo, Biden's prosecutor, he continues. He says, you will hear Trump say in his own voice that they should pay in cash. Instead, they paid as so-called advisory services. And Pecker consulted with AMI's general counsel, talked to lawyers, and then said AMI would eat the costs. And apparently Trump had sort of a running fee to them, right? He was just kind of filling in their coffers. Now, a month before the election, says the prosecutor Colangelo, the Washington Post came out and published a video that they turned this campaign upside down. You may remember it. It was a hot mic, and it was released from Access Hollywood. Dun, dun, dun. Which again, did Trump grab Stormy by the purse and talk about that on Access Hollywood? I don't think what that tape was about. I think it was not related to her at all. Now, the Washington Post reporter emailed Hope Hicks, which was someone who worked for Trump, with a transcript of Donald Trump bragging about his assaults. I don't think Trump was saying he was assaulting them. I don't think he was saying I was going and committing assaults. He was just kind of, saying in certain environments, it was locker room talk. Not to rehash all that. But you can see why they want to bring this back in, right? You see what he's doing to the jury. He's like, Trump was bragging about sexual assaults. It's like, come on, man. That's not what he was doing at all. He's not like I went around was like, Weinsteining a bunch of women. Okay. It was not at all what he said, but he's trying to smear him. That has nothing to do with Stormy Daniels at all, which is the only thing that is the discussion of these charges, these 34 counts of falsifying a business record. So prosecutor continues. He says, and Trump said, grab him by the purse. And he says it out loud, and he probably felt really awkward about it. And he's like, or maybe he really loved it. I don't know. You can do anything, he says. You can do anything you want when you're a celebrity. Now, allies withdrew their endorsements. They're like, oh my gosh. The Republican National Committee considered replacing him a month before Election Day. Remember how ridiculous our country was? At the defense table, Trump whispers to his lawyer, Blanche. He's like, it's a pretty funny tape, wasn't it? Whatever. I don't know what he said. But, it's just like, okay, so they're talking. So prosecutor continues and says, one day after the Access Hollywood tape was published, AMI told Michael Cohen that Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Keith Davidson, had another story about infidelity with a Stormy, right? A total degenerate. Now, at Trump's direction, Cohen arranged to buy the story. So now they're like, okay, so this woman now comes out of the woodwork. You understand what happened here? Access Hollywood drops their tape. Stormy comes out, says, oh, perfect. We have a wounded animal. The media is going to go blast this dude. I've got a story. Something sounds plausible. You know, maybe they met one time somewhere or something, you know, cross paths, whatever. Oh, we were here at this location. She can craft a story. Says, I'm going to go get paid for this. Karen McDougal's president. She got $150. So she's talking about this. Hey, maybe I'll go get my piece too. So at Trump's direction, Cohen arranged to buy the story, is what the government alleges. Now, Trump told Cohen to delay all this until after the election, they say. And Cohen tried to, but Stormy Daniels and her lawyer saw through it. So it was arranged that Cohen would pay $130,000 through a shell company. And they created this. It was called Essential Consultants. And so Cohen took out a home equity loan. He paid Stormy Daniels. Cohen gave false information to the bank, and he did that at Trump's direction. And he did that for his benefit to influence the election. And so this was a conspiracy. Not charged. No one charged that. So why are you even talking about it? Dishonest. Now, prosecutor continues, Colangelo. He says, it was elections fraud. Pure and simple. How come he didn't get charged for that? Strange behavior. Trump was concerned, they say. On election night, Keith Davidson texted the National Enquirer, Dylan Howard, and asked, what have we done? We got Trump elected. What have we done? And so Trump invited Pecker to the White House to say thank you to him for getting him elected. And in January of 2017, before Trump moved to D.C. into the White House, Michael Cohen met with Alan Weisselberg, the CFO of Trump Org. Now, they couldn't admit that this was a payoff to a Stormy, and so Weisselberg asked for a bank statement. And so they doubled it. And they did that so Cohen could pay taxes on this expense. And they added another $60,000 as a year-end bonus to him too. And Weisselberg wrote it all down, and Trump approved it. And you're going to see that Trump was frugal, but not in this case. This might be the only time that he spent money. And so they purported to pay under a retainer agreement that didn't even exist. In fact, in February 2017, says Colangelo, Michael Cohen went down to D.C. and they confirmed the plan. And then Cohen sent a fake invoice to Trump. And then he got a check. And he did that 11 times. And they entered all of this into the Trump Organization's general ledger. And they did that falsely. And now the first payments were from Donald Trump and from his revocable trust, but then from Trump himself. And every time he did this, there were false business record each time. You're going to hear a lot about Michael Cohen as we go through this. And he's going to be telling you a lot of things. Now, when it all became public, Michael Cohen lied. And this is drawing the sting, right? They're going to call Michael Cohen a liar, so we better call him a liar first. He lied. Now, he has a criminal record. We're telling you this, so you're not surprised, because we don't want you to be surprised when they tell you. And so Cohen will testify that he pled guilty and he went to jail. And for the Karen McDougal payoff and for Stormy Daniels. He also went to jail for tax fraud and for lying to a bank and to Congress. Now, Cohen's testimony, though, is not standing on its own. Cohen is backed up by other witnesses. David Pecker is going to be here to confirm this, and Keith Davidson will as well. And we have records, and we're going to show them to you, ladies and gentlemen. And sometimes we're going to spend a lot of time on these records, sometimes at length, because this is about a criminal conspiracy and a cover-up. And we are confident, and we are done here presenting this evidence. You will have no reasonable doubt about what happened in this case. And so I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, ignore the irrelevant sideshows that come up in this trial. They're trying to distract you. My colleague Joshua Steinglass will explain Donald Trump is guilty. Judge says, wow, thank you for that. That was great. Bravo. Okay, let me collect my thoughts. He says, now, how about your turn, defense? So the defense stands up. Todd Blanche, representing Donald Trump, the margin madman, fighting for the president. He says, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is innocent. President Trump did not commit any crimes, not one. Now, you've seen President Trump for years. You're from New York. He's from New York, and we know him. He's larger than life. But what he's doing here is doing what any of us would do in a situation like this here today. He is defending himself. Now, today we call him President Trump because he's earned that. He was the president, elected by the people of America, and he's running for president again now. In fact, he's the nominee of the Republican Party. And now, while all this is going on, Alvin Bragg and the Democrats, my words, are prosecuting this case against a man who did nothing wrong. In fact, the evidence in this trial is from years ago. In fact, it's before COVID. You remember that? Way before COVID. Witnesses that you're going to hear from are going to talk about 2015. It's 2024. The story you just heard from Matthew is not true. And at the end of this trial, there will be plenty of reasonable reasonable doubt. And as we go through this, ladies and gentlemen, you will learn that President Trump is in fact very successful. He's been very successful in a number of different projects and buildings and different endeavors, many of which you see around us here today. But after President Trump took office, Michael Cohen became his personal attorney. And for his services, he billed him a retainer, like many lawyers do. It's called a flat fee, and you bill it every month and work against the fee. And so Michael Cohen billed Trump $35,000 a month for those services, right about what Nathan Wade was getting paid. Now, the invoice was processed and paid. Not a big deal. 9 of the checks made their way down to the White House. He's the only signatory on his account. Now, you're also going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that Miss Daniels, Stormy, did in fact, she did sign a non-disclosure agreement. There was a deal. There was a contract. But President Trump did not pay Michael Cohen $130,000. No, that number you're going to hear a lot of is not accurate. No, he paid him $420,000. Would a frugal businessman do that? Would he just decide to more than double all of the money? That was not a payback, he says. This was normal legal retainer expenses. Now, Michael Cohen did work for the president. He did legal work. He was a lawyer. And he also did work for Melania, our beautiful first lady. Says there's a lot that goes into that. Now, he writes invoices and sends those invoices. And when those invoices go to the recipient, they use what's called a ledger. And many of you are familiar with this, ladies and gentlemen. We know what a ledger is. It's just like a checkbook. And you're going to hear it was done by Debs Tarasoff. She managed the checkbook. She handled the ledger. Now, she is not going to say that she had any conversation with President Trump about this. She's not saying that Trump gave her permission to falsify the records or anything like that. This was regular business. An invoice came, she marked it in the ledger, the organization paid the legal bill. Now, some of you heard this last week during jury selection. You may remember this concept came up when we were asking you questions about things like accomplice liability. Now, this is an attempt by the government to get around what they need to prove. And so don't fall for it. They are going to know and show something to prove their case and to excuse their failure to prove that Trump had no knowledge or no intent behind any of this. In fact, Michael Cohen is the person with knowledge and intent. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a lot of conversation about this. And here is a spoiler alert for you. We live in America. There's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. Every time you run a campaign ad, you're influencing an election, aren't you? And so there's nothing illegal about entering into non-disclosure agreements. It happens all the time. Now, what Miss Daniels did, by contrast, was almost extortion. She came to the Trump campaign right after another smear from Access Hollywood dropped, and she demanded that she get paid like McDougal did, because they were talking. And she wanted her piece of the pie, and she knew what better moment to get it than now. Now, you're going to hear that this agreement was negotiated by lawyers. Objection, says the Bragg team. Maybe it was Colangelo. Judge says, please approach. Lawyers go up to the judge's bench, sidebar up front. They're whispering to each other. Trump seated alone at the defense table. Time fast forwards and we're back. The judge says, you know, government, your objection is sustained. So your last comment is stricken. So it was negotiated by lawyers. Oh, so like you're impeding, you're commenting on her right to counsel. So, you know, they don't want you to hear that Stormy Daniels had this whole thing orchestrated by a legal team. She's just this innocent victim who got attacked by Trump's mega power and it's hush money, right? No. So judge says, no, that objection is sustained. You don't get to talk about her lawyers. And so the last comment is stricken. So Todd Blanche comes back. He says, okay, fine. Now there's nothing illegal about a non-disclosure agreement, period. Okay. Happens all the time. And you're going to hear us cross-examining Michael Cohen when he comes back up and takes a stand. And you're going to learn that after the election, Michael Cohen wanted a job in the administration. But guess what? He didn't get one. Now he defended President Trump on TV, but he was also a criminal. Okay. He cheated on his taxes and other things. And suddenly he got caught. In 2018, he got caught. He's a felon. And he's here going to be testifying. Michael Cohen, says Trump's defense, he goes on podcasts and he says that he'd like to see President Trump go to prison. In fact, in this case, he's talking about it recently. Just last night, 12 hours ago, Mr. Cohen, the perjurer, said on a public forum that he wanted to see Trump in an orange jumpsuit. He said that last night. And Cohen walked into a courtroom very near here and he lied. Objection! Sustained, says the judge. Come up here. They go up to the judge's bench and we're back. He says, that objection is sustained, ladies and gentlemen. You'll disregard disregard that question. Todd Blanche continues for Trump. Says, you're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Cohen raised his right hand and then lied. And then admitted that. He pled guilty to lying under oath. Do you know why that is? Because Michael Cohen is obsessed with President Trump. Like level 5 obsessed. His entire livelihood relies on President Trump being convicted for this case. Every waking moment, he is thinking about what he can do to take him out. And that is not someone who is without bias or prejudice. And you should weigh that against their credibility. Now, the same goes for Stormy Daniels, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump met her in 2006. He met a lot of people. He was running a very popular TV show back then. You may remember it. It's called The Apprentice. And so, yeah, he spoke to her about that, as he speaks to a lot of people about this. But guess what? She tried to make money off these communications. She tried to turn them into something that they're not. And in fact, she's made hundreds of thousands of dollars since. She was paid for a documentary that they just released on Peacock. Courts have sided with President Trump against her defamatory lies. And in fact, Stormy owes Donald Trump $600,000, ladies and gentlemen. And so when she takes the stand, she's going to be a little bit upset with him. She owes him over $500,000. So that should be weighed against her credibility. She's clearly biased. She's got a vendetta, just like Cohen did. But Stormy, the truth is, she knows nothing about the charges here. She wasn't involved in the invoice from Cohen or the ledger or the check. So if that's what we're talking about, she should not even be here. They say this was supposed to be a, quote, catch and kill conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen, a catch and kill conspiracy. Okay, well, there's no conspiracy charge here. Where is it? We haven't seen it. There isn't one. That's because there is nothing illegal about what happened here. Nothing. AMI is a company. They own the National Enquirer. Mr. Pecker and President Trump, they're allowed to do this. You may not be familiar with it, but it happens all the time with famous people. We live in New York. We are New Yorkers. That's why we're here, to be New Yorkers. And you said, ladies and gentlemen, that when you were going to be honored and accepting of this sacred duty, that you would be able to put aside your views of President Trump. We trust you to do that. We do. So we ask you here today to base your decision on the evidence that's going to come before you. And there will be a swift not guilty verdict in this court. Thank you. Judge says, yeah, whatever. Blanche, please approach. Come up here. So the judge says, okay, we're going to take a very short 10-minute recess and we're going to step out and we'll be back at noon. And so we've got some great links down in the description below ourselves. Don't forget to go to watchingthewatchers.locals.com if you want to become a member and get some extra members only streams. We go live in the mornings, 6 days a week, including on Saturdays. And so we'd love to have you join us. Great way to support our show, meet the best community on the entire internet. And we'll look forward to seeing you inside there. And of course, here when you subscribe and like this video. We're grateful for it.